Now, to help us unpack this, let's bring in Byron York here in Washington. In Miami, attorney Harmeet Dhillon. And in Arizona, Congressman Andy Biggs, a member of the House Freedom Caucus and Judiciary Committee. Guys, we have a lot to get through tonight. Congressman Biggs, I want to start with you first. I hope you were able to watch that interview with Rudy. What struck you about what he said about Comey, Mueller, in the entire year of investigation mania?
Well, I think my impression is that he's got it right. And my frustration is that we've gone a year and there's no actus reus, there's no criminal activity. There's no culpable mental state going on here. And this is just that Mueller investigation is not objective. And that really resonates with me because it's not objective. It's biased. And they're trying to use these questions, and this interview is going to be a trap fest for Comey and for Mueller against the president. And it gets to the whole thing. They just want to go after President Trump.
All right, Byron, there's so much to unpack. This is what Rudy said about the state of the investigation and whether it should wrap up. Let's watch.
I believe that Attorney General Sessions, my good friend, and Rosenstein, who I don't know, I believe they should, in the interest of justice, end this investigation. There's been too much government misconduct. The crimes now have all been committed by the government.
Wow. That was a moment. The crimes have been committed by the government. When I watched him, I thought, boy, he would have made an interesting attorney general pick, wouldn't he?
No kidding. I think we have seen in the last 24 hours since the release of these proposed questions from Mueller and now with this Rudy interview on Hannity, I think we've seen a dramatic change in this case. I mean, it's become much more confrontational. The lawyers, John Dowd and Ty Cobb, who were counseling a more conciliatory approach toward Mueller, they are now gone. And we've just had the president's lawyer go on TV for an hour. I mean, you didn't see Dowd and Cobb doing that. And basically also, the one thing that Rudy said was he thinks the odds are against President Trump actually sitting down and talking with Mueller. So they made a lot of news in the last 24 hours.
No, they're ramping it up. And Monica, we have Harmeet Dhillon on with us. Harmeet, here's the deal. We have had a string of attorneys with the president. And Ty Cobb, he's leaving at the end of May. Of course, John Dowd, he exited in March. There still is Marty and Jane Raskin recently brought on the team. Kasowitz, his personal attorney, one of his personal attorneys, he was in and out briefly last year. But now they bring in Emmett Flood. Now, in full disclosure, Emmett and I were co-clerks back in the day on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. You see him up on the upper left-hand corner. Flood is the kind of attorney who is probably not going to give a lot of interviews on television. He's one of the smartest people I know, one of the finest people I know, and just top-notch, kind of person he should have been brought in right from the very beginning in this case. But to bring him in, who worked for the Clinton during the impeachment investigation, he's at Williams and Connolly. This does tell you that I think finally the Trump team has gotten really serious at Mueller. Isn't that tiddlywinks here? Mueller's going to go for the big get here. Your reaction?
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. I completely agree with you. Emmett Flood is a great addition to the team, and it wasn't just Clinton. He also has represented Dick Cheney in private practice, and he also was in the White House counsel's office and did investigation under the Bush administration as well. So he's played both. He's got experience in both types of administrations, and what they're signaling here is by picking somebody with impeachment experience is that the scales have fallen from the eyes of the White House lawyers, and they realize that the stakes are about impeachment here. When you see the questions in the Mueller leak, the questions are clearly not about any crime that the president may have committed. It's clearly doing some free research for the Democrats with respect to a potential impeachment trial. It could not be clearer, and I'm glad as a supporter of the president and a lawyer to see that they finally woken up. And, the Giuliani interview that we just saw right now was amazing, very encouraging to me. Also to see somebody with some reality check here. I mean, these are not people you can trust at their face value. We have seen the crimes, we have seen the deception, and we have seen the absolute unethical conduct that's been committed against this president so far. So I feel much more reassured seeing them kind of smartening up and girding for battle here.
And Congressman Biggs, of course, the big news yesterday was The Freedom Caucus, which you're a member, leaking a draft impeachment document focused on, of course, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. Rudy said, look, I don't know him. That was kind of a brush off of Rosenstein just there. But they're taking it up. I mean, they're taking it up. You guys seem to be taking it up in the House. And Rudy himself said this about Comey. Devastating. Let's watch.
I know James Comey. I know the president. Sorry, Jim, you're a liar, a disgraceful liar. Every FBI agent in America has his head down because of you. It would have been good for God if God had kept you out of being head of the FBI.
Congressman.
Amen to that. That's one of those comments when he says that, I stand up and cheer, because we've been saying that. We've been trying to make it clear. Thank goodness for Rudy Giuliani saying that, because Mr. Comey has been a disgrace. Trey Gowdy said it great. Nobody has brought more disrepute on the FBI than James Comey. And this is where we are as a nation. I can't go to constituents. They are all upset. What's happening with Comey? Why isn't he behind bars? And he needs to be investigated himself.
Look, they had this moment, Byron, about extortion. When Rod Rosenstein yesterday said, basically, we're not going to be extorted at the Justice Department into backing down, being intimidated. And today, a number of editorials written and columns written. There was one in USA Today by two prominent Democrats, a former Obama official and Fred Wertheimer at the Brookings Institution, saying the Freedom Caucus and the Republicans are doing the bidding of the president, trying to intimidate the special counsel's office. It's a disgrace. I mean, if it was hot before, it's being ramped up now big time on both sides. Those
were real go-to-war words, the whole extortion thing. And there are people in the Justice Department who are unhappy with the Attorney General and with Rod Rosenstein, who feel they've given too much to Congress. But on this thing, I cannot say that the Justice Department should hand over every single document to Congress, not saying that. But Rosenstein would have more credibility today if he had not made getting documents from the Justice Department and the FBI like pulling teeth for Congress over the last year. Paul Ryan is not a big warrior in this kind of thing, and he said the FBI was stonewalling Congress, the House of Representatives, on this. So they don't have a lot of room to talk now that they're complaining.
And Giuliani said, Harmeet, that when he was asked by Hannity, are there two systems of justice in this country? Rudy jumped right on it and said, yeah, one for Hillary and one for everybody else, one for the president. I mean, look, he's the lawyer representing the president, but for a lot of Americans who are watching this, you destroy documents, you destroy emails, you smash BlackBerries. Everyone gets immunity. You get to do an interview that's really cozy right before the 4th of July, no transcript taken, never under oath. And then look at what's happened on the other side to this president. For a year, with all this important stuff happening in the world, he has been hounded by a special counsel whose office is populated by partisans who not are just Democrats, but have an animus toward this president. And I have to say, when I heard Rudy said that, I said, well, I have to say I agree. I mean, all the evidence points to that.
Yeah, Laura, I would actually say there are three systems of government here. There's one for Hillary, there's one for normal schmoes in the world, and then there's a especially heinous one for President Trump. I mean, from day one, from Clapper telling Comey to go brief the president on this non-existent Russia drama, to give a news hook to Jake Tapper and CNN, down to the incident that Giuliani recounted, where Mueller was interviewed by the president for the job of FBI director with Rosenstein sitting next to him. And then they walk out, and a couple of days later, knowing that the president has rejected him for that job, Rosenstein picks that very person. I mean, the deck is stacked with partisans, people with axes to grind. And I think that the mask really fell yesterday when Rosenstein's angry words came out and made it really personal. And, who does he think he is? He works for the president. He's an inferior officer of the United States, executive branch, working ultimately for the president. I was just shocked. And just like FBI agents are hanging their heads in shame, I'm sure there's a lot of good attorneys at the Department of Justice who are stunned that people are picking a fight with their bosses like this on television. It was shocking, frankly.
I tweeted this a couple of minutes ago, but I think one of the big moments in this interview was when Giuliani referenced the Stormy Daniels issue. I believe we have the soundbite. Let's watch.
Having something to do with paying some Stormy Daniels woman $130,000, I mean, which is going to turn out to be perfectly legal. That money was not campaign money. Sorry, I'm giving you a fact now that you don't know. It's not campaign money. No campaign finance violation. So
they funneled it through the law firm.
Funneled through a law firm, and the president repaid it.
Okay. On April 6th of this year, on Air Force One, this was the exchange.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
You have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so it's hard to hear there, but he said, no, I didn't know about it. And then he said, you're going to have to ask Michael Cohen about the payment. Now, I was putting my legal hat on during the break, and I thought, well, maybe did Trump pay it after April 6th? I don't know. But that, to me, Byron York, the left is jumping all over that tonight, saying, what the heck? He didn't know. He didn't know. Rudy's on TV. What's going on here?
Well, these are real questions. Rudy just gave us a completely different version of this. But
unless the president paid it after April 6th, which maybe he did.
But it appears that what Giuliani was saying, first of all, he said, paying somebody some money to be quiet is not a criminal act. That's okay. And there was no campaign finance violation.
He knows that's where it's going,
So it
correct?
appears to me that the real concern is that there would be a campaign finance vulnerability on this.
Right, because they have the president on tape on Air Force One saying he did not know about the payment. And you'll have to ask Michael Cohen about that. Rudy just goes on with Hannity and says, oh, no, he reimbursed him. Like,
well,
what?
First of all, they may not have thought this whole thing through.
Well, I mean, if you go on Hannity, you better think it through as the attorney or the president. I don't think Emmett Flood would probably, that's why Emmett Flood's probably not going to do a lot of interviews. I love Rudy, but they better have an explanation for that. That's a problem.
They decided that the campaign finance vulnerability was bigger.
Okay. You can chime in on that, Congressman Biggs, but look, I was a criminal defense lawyer. This is what I did. I was always looking for inconsistencies in statements like any lawyer would. There may be an explanation for this, and I think we'll probably hear one, but the left is going to seize on that. It's all about credibility and impeaching someone's credibility throughout the process. So if you're not being truthful about this, then are you being truthful about the Russians? I mean, you can just see where this is going to go. Go ahead.
Well, that's right. But there's two points to that. That's coming from the side that's just been lying and abusing their power all the way throughout. So that I immediately discount that. The second thing is, I don't think somebody with President Trump's income level actually maybe writes all his checks. You know what I mean? It would not surprise me if yes, he authorized a payment, and it just gets kind of lost in the shuffle. I know that sounds crazy, perhaps on a certain level. But I mean, here's a guy with a massive income, and he's dealing with a lot of things, and it's not illegal, it's not campaign finance.
Well, yeah, that's all. I agree on all. I think you're right on all that. But I mean, again, we have to bring out all issues. We're doing an honest broker conversation about what's happened. Overwhelmingly biased against this president, this investigation. We've established this week after week after week on the show. The best legal minds in the United States. And we gotta be fair and focusing on what seems to be not kind of adding up on another point. But Harmeet, I want to go to you, and Byron, I want you to comment on this as well. When Rudy was asked about whether the president should testify under oath, videotaped, remember when Clinton did that, and it was Saul Weisenberg who did the questioning back in the at Whitewater day, that presented some problems for the president. Well, let's watch.
I would like to get one not under oath. I'd want it videotaped, and I'm not videotaped, but audio tapes. I want to make sure they don't misrepresent his answers. But this is an outrageous miscarriage of justice.
Harmeet.
Well, first of all, we know that Hillary Clinton, when she was interviewed by the FBI, had no transcription and had immunized witnesses in the room who shouldn't have been immunized. They were all guilty of crimes themselves, apparently, and not under oath. And it was sort of very friendly, up and done. Now, as a lawyer, we know even as junior associates, the worst potential witnesses are very powerful people because they're used to getting their way, they're used to not being questioned, and so they're typically the ones who need the most preparation. Yep. So, as Rudy was saying, he's going to need a couple of days, I would say a couple of weeks of preparation for that type of interview, and there is no justification. One more point, though, that your viewers should know is that the FBI has gotten into the habit, particularly if they want to, get somebody for a crime, they don't record it. I mean, you would think the opposite is true, right? If you're a good investigator and you want to make sure you have the evidence, you have a contemporaneous recording. This has gotten the FBI in trouble and has resulted in a lot of convictions being vacated over the years on appeal.
Very interesting.
Because the evidence doesn't match up. And so I agree with Rudy that there needs to be a record of it. I just overall, though, I question whether he should do it at all, given the way that we see.
Got it. Byron, last word.
Oh, the whole point was trying to limit this thing. Rudy said no more than 2 hours. The number of questions that were released yesterday.
How do you feel? How did you feel when you did the interview with Maria Bartiromo? I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically that.
That could easily have been 2 days of questioning, not talking about the preparation, 2 days of actual questioning. So he definitely wanted to limit that. They wouldn't mind doing it in writing if they could, but he said Mueller wouldn't go for that. So right now they're in the try to limit it phase before they get into the no, I'm not going to talk phase.
Yeah, I think the good news is Emmett Flood is on board. I literally cannot think. Maybe one other lawyer I could think of would be just as good, if not better, than Emmett. But that's awesome news for President Trump and a sign that things are indeed very, very serious. Great panel, guys. Thank you so much. And when we come back, exposing and defunding America's killing machine. Tonight's angle. You do not want to miss this right after this.